I'm Alyssa Friedland, and this is the story behind my stories.
You're listening to the Author Stories Podcast, bringing you the story behind the stories and the storytellers.
Margaret White,
Terry Brooks,
Sheena Kamal,
Matthew Quick,
J.T. Ellison,
Walt D. Williams,
Brad Thor,
Corey, Dr. O,
Brandon Sanderson,
Robin Mom,
Ernest Klein, Jim Butcher,
Sherwin Harris.
Visit hankgarner.com for archives of all the shows. Today's guest is
Alyssa Friedland.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to Author Stories. You can find all of the archives of the show over at hankgarner.com. There are handy links over in the sidebar on the right-hand side where you can subscribe to the show. You can find all of the archives in a handy little drop-down list, or there's a search bar where you can search for your favorite author and see if they have been on the show in these past more than 400 episodes. Thank you to our sponsors for allowing us to do this. And we've got some new sponsors coming on. Daniel Kinney, my favorite middle grade author, is just doing amazing things right now. He is publishing like a madman, but he's putting out excellent books. I buy his books for my nieces and nephews all the time. My kids are a little older now, but my nieces and nephews, I buy Daniel's books and put them in their hands. They are top shelf quality and really fun books. There's a link to Daniel's Amazon page in the show notes, and we're going to be highlighting more of his books as we go on this month. But go visit Daniel Kinney and buy his books for your favorite kids, and they will love it. Roy M. Griffiths has a new book, Bringing the Fire, The Lonesome George Chronicles, Book 2. Roy is really doing some amazing stuff in speculative fiction, and we're going to be highlighting more of those as the month goes on. But go pick up Roy's newest books. There's a link to it in the show notes. If you're a fan of alternative history or war and military thrillers, you're going to love these books. There's a link to it in the show notes. Also, thanks to my buddies Nick and Jason from Galaxy's Edge for sponsoring the show. Thanks for tuning in. As always, at the end of the show, we have an audiobook clip from Richard Gleaves, the Jason Crane series. He enlisted for the money. He stayed for the girl. Gateway to the Galaxy, the new series everyone is talking about, beginning with Book 1, Into the Breach. Frank and Marine Space Corps 1 find themselves across the galaxy in a WWE smackdown with the legions of a boss-level villain. But the party's just getting started. He donned the mantle of a celestial knight to impress a girl? Well, an empress. Now destiny's calling in a debt. A lightning-paced military fantasy full of outlandish comedy and impossible situations that will have you hailing for these Marines from the get-go. For fans of Green Lantern and the Stargate universe. Listen to what some readers are saying. This is good stuff. Thanks for the new obsession. I recommend and can't wait for the next book. And the visual pictures and action are amazing. They're getting the band back together, and this time, it's serious nonsense. Pick up the Gateway to the Galaxy series by Jonathan Yanez and J.R. Castle, available now on Amazon.com. There's a link to it in the show notes. Gateway to the Galaxy. Well, thanks for joining me again for the Author Stories Podcast, where I bring you the story behind the stories and the storytellers. Today, I'm really excited to have Alyssa Friedland on the show with me today. Alyssa has a fantastic new book out. It is called The Intermission, and when you're hearing this, it is release day for The Intermission, so you can run out and grab your copy of it. Welcome to the show, Alyssa.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm excited to have you. Alyssa, we begin each show with the same question, and that question is, what is your first memory of wanting to be a writer or storyteller?
Second grade.
I love that you immediately go to a moment.
Pardon?
I said I love that you immediately go to a moment.
Yes, it was second grade. We had read a book. I forget what it was called, but it was something about like a child who ate too much chocolate, and I think he turned into chocolate or something. So my first creative writing bit was a bit of plagiarism because I called it Strawberry Hair, and it was a girl who loved strawberry ice cream so much that she ended up with pink hair. And I was so proud of it, and I remember my second grade teacher making a huge fuss over it because, everyone else wrote half a page. I filled, 3 whole pages, and I was so excited. And so pretty much knew I wanted to be a writer from that day forward.
Well, plagiarism has been the friend of many a young writer. That's there's nothing.
I'm not too upset about it. I think given that I was 7, I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I think the statute of limitations has probably run out by now. So.
Yes, exactly.
Oh man, that's I think, most writers probably do that sort of thing is that, until you find, your words and your style and your voice, we start by imitating things that we like and that we know. And, inevitably, as we kind of work that out, we find our own voice in that. And 7 years old is a pretty great time to start finding that voice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely.
You turned in 3 pages or so. Everybody else did a half a page. What was your teacher's response to you?
I mean, she called my mother. She's really gifted. She truly, truly loves this creative writing act. And it was true. And I never stopped writing. I just love it. I don't know why making up a story and creating something fictional is so appealing to me, but it just always has been. I mean, I do some journalism as well and some personal essays, so obviously those have truth to them, and those really just boil down to, one, a love of expression, but also just I love words. I'm a total word nerd, and I love when I can think of the proper word, and when I can't think of the proper word, nothing makes me more sort of agitated and, on tilt. Than when I, just can't think of what I want to say. And then if it hits me in the middle of the night, I'll pop up and write it down. I find a sentence, a great sentence, the sexiest thing in the world. So I'm just a born writer, I guess.
That's fantastic. Were you a big reader as a kid?
Yes, huge reader. I remember, I'm looking back at these stories, I think I was very nerdy. I would go to the town library, grew up in Jersey, go to the town library, and they had a rule, you could take out 12 books at a time. I guess they didn't want kids, just losing all the books, and they wanted books available for other children. And that I went and, I struck a private deal with the librarian that I was able to take out more than 12 because, I would read them so quickly. I was very into Nancy Drew. The most exciting thing for me would be I would go to the library, get the books, sit in the back of my mom's car, and then, the big thing for me was, well, which one should I pick first? What am I going to start with? So that was, I could still even, bring back that exciting feeling. I can, it's very familiar to me, the way the butterflies in my stomach when it was time to choose.
Oh, that's so cool. So cool. So you said that from that day forward, when you were in second grade, you always knew you were going to be a writer. Did you pursue that in college?
I did. I went to Yale, and I was managing editor of the Yale Daily News, which was a newspaper it's the oldest college newspaper, and it came out Monday through Friday. So it was a lot of work and a different kind of writing. I mean, it wasn't creative, but there were ways that I was able to flex my creativity. We expanded the arts coverage when I was there, and had a fashion thing. We had a Oscars review. We did I was able to add sort of news sections, but it wasn't novel writing, obviously. But it's still I did a tremendous amount of editing, and so just reading sentences over and over every night and feeling we can tweak it, we can make it better, we can make it stronger, cutting a lot of unnecessary words. Those are skills that I use in my novel writing. So I'm really grateful for that experience.
Right. A lot of novelists have had some of their formative years in journalism and in nonfiction writing. Lots of novelists. Do you feel like that time working with the Yale paper and the other things that you've done, that writing the nonfiction stuff affects your fiction writing?
I think so. Just in word choice, strong sentences, clarity, and really probably in editing, and just reading something over and saying, like in a nonfiction piece, you would never have like unnecessary sentences because it's just not the nature. You wouldn't like add in a bunch of extra extraneous detail. It's easier to do that in a novel, but it's ultimately just filler and it doesn't move the story forward. So if you're writing like a short piece for a newspaper or magazine, you have very limited word count. A novel might be 100,000 words. I'm writing a piece that's 800 words. I don't have room for this extra, so I always have to say to myself, is this sentence moving the story forward? Is this paragraph moving the story forward? Is this word? And there's no reason in a novel that it should be any different. I will have scenes sometimes that I write because I feel pressure to do my word count. I feel pressure to like get more pages. I know that I've only written 10,000 words so far and I'm behind, and I'll end up writing things. But then when I go back and I look at it with the lens that I use for when I write nonfiction, I'm like, yes, I wrote this scene, and yes, it's well written, but it does absolutely nothing towards moving the story forward or enriching my characters or like rounding out who my characters are. Gotta go. Gotta scrap it.
Journalism could, when you're reporting on a story, you could just list a list of bullet-pointed facts, and that would get the point across. You could tell all the facts of a story that way, but no one wants to read that because we, as humans, we love story. We love that when we read about even a car crash or something like that, there's a bit of drama to it. There's the human aspect of the story other than just the list of things that happened. So I believe that the storytelling gene works itself out in everything we do, whether it's, writing novels or, just communicating what happened to someone. I love that you always look at moving the story forward when you're reporting.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
You have to grab people's attention.
Exactly.
And, there's a lot of distraction in our world, so everything has to be necessary. Otherwise, you're going to lose people.
Right. So what did you do after college? You left Yale. Where did you start working? And had you always kept your eye on writing fiction?
So, interesting story. I really wanted to be a writer, but I had no money. And I love my parents, but I did not want to move back home to New Jersey and live with them. I wanted to live in New York. I grew up in a suburb of New York, and I just really wanted to live in the city. And I really wanted to make some money after, graduating college and wanting to be an adult. Worked in marketing. I made some money, saved some money. And then I ended up doing something totally off course. I went to law school, which I regret. People always ask me, it must have been so valuable, and you're probably a better writer from it, and you must really use what you learned in law school. And honestly, I want to say that because, I took out loans. It was expensive. I worked really hard in law school, and I want to say, yes, I'm so grateful. I'm a better writer because of it. But, unlike, the journalism I do, which helps my novel writing, the legal writing is so unbelievably different that I don't feel that was necessary. But I did it because I was afraid. I wanted to become a full-time writer, but I didn't know how. I didn't understand how to make a go of it, and I actually have gone back to Yale, and I've spoken to the career services, and I've said, I think that certain paths are so open and obvious to people. If you want to go into finance, you want to go become a doctor, you want to become a teacher, you want to be a lawyer. It's a very set path. But if you want to do something a little more artistic, it can be very daunting, and there isn't a clear path. And I think that there has to be a stronger segment of career services in liberal arts colleges that enable people to seek out mentors. I would have really benefited from a couple of coffees with established writers when I was an undergrad. That would have helped me figure out, okay, yes, it's true. You make no money when you're sitting at home writing your own novel, but you can teach a writing course. You can do this X job. You can work at a magazine, and they're very flexible with the hours, or and you'll still have time to write. I could have used some guidance about how to make that happen for myself. So I kind of did this chicken out route where I thought, okay, maybe I'll come back to writing later, but for now I want to make a good living. I'm going to do the step path. I went to law school. I worked at a law firm. I wasn't happy. And I said, you know what? I looked at my husband, who was getting up every day and happy to go to work, and he didn't dread Sunday nights. He was like, I don't mind that tomorrow's Monday. Like, sure, I love my weekends, but I don't mind going to work. And I was like, I wonder what that must feel like. And after a while, I was like, forget it. I quit. I was like, I'm going to do what I really want. And it was the best thing in my life. Like, I can't explain how much I enjoy my job now versus how little I liked it back then when I was a lawyer.
Publishing is this really weird thing that, we're like 100 years into the modern publishing industry. And it's still just as elusive today as it ever has been, until you are on the inside. But on the outside looking in, it's just like this impenetrable, thing. And what do writers really do? Are they, do they just sit at their keyboard all day long for, 18 hours a day? It's just there's so much mystique around it still. It's kind of crazy.
There is.
Yeah.
It's funny because, it's very solitary until you have a book coming out. And then it's like this super social, promote yourself, do a million interviews, do a lot of readings, go out and talk to people. So it's like, I can't think of any other job that's like where you're all alone, like interacting like crazy. And then you're all alone again when you go work on your next project. It's really, it's very different.
It is. Well, speaking of promoting your next project, the Intermission is out today. And I've been reading through this book. It is really fantastic. Tell us where this book came from and kind of set up the scenario for us.
So, the inspiration came from, really desiring to write a book about marriage because I wanted to do a deep character analysis and I wanted to have the opportunity man's voice because I had not done that in my first book, and I wanted to take on that challenge. And I wanted to, kind of like the television show The Affair, where they'll show the same scene, but they'll show it through different people's lenses. I think that's really interesting, how people can be in the same room and leave with very different impressions. And I just think marriage is a very fascinating thing to begin with. How are two people who, have different backgrounds, different upbringings, different life experiences, different friends, everything, and then they come together, and it's like you got to form this sort of new unit. So I think it's really a ripe topic for novel writing. And I decided I was going to write a sort of an interesting marriage story with very complicated characters. And Cass and Jonathan are nothing if not complicated. At times sympathetic, and at times you want to wring their necks. And it makes you question, should they stay together? Should they, what should they do after this separation? Should they stay together or should they not? And I wanted a very controversial, sort of evocative book where people would really want to debate it with their friends.
Well, this is a really intriguing book because most marriage stories, most love stories, even if you want to go that far, don't really address the fact that people are flawed, that we're all human, that we all bring our various stuff to the relationship. And, most books are written sort of slanted. There's definitely a protagonist and maybe the other person in the couple is even the antagonist. And we're usually drawn to one or the other, and your characters are very real and very well drawn that way.
Thank you. No, that was definitely what I set out to do, and I wanted it to be just as much Jonathan's story as Cass's story. So I wanted to make sure he had just as much of a voice as her because, that's what a marriage is. It's two people. It's not just one.
Yeah. Did you... when you started writing this book, did you have an idea of what the whole book was from the beginning?
Not really. I don't outline because it's just not my style. It's not my method. And so I didn't. I just got into it. I felt the characters and I felt my way to the ending.
Gotcha. Did you have an idea of where it was going to end? A lot of times we'll have kind of a beginning scene and maybe a feeling of what the ending is, and we're writing toward that. Or was this just complete discovery for you?
It was really really complete discovery for me, I have to be honest. I did not know where it was going to end, and I'm glad it ended where it ended. I don't know that everyone will, like the ending. I'm really interested to see. I mean, I hope that they'll be, they'll like the writing. They'll really enjoy being along for the ride. But I'm very curious. I don't want to give away the spoiler, but I'm very curious to hear from people. Like, are they, happy with the ending or not? I think that's one of the best things to talk about. Let's say in a book club that's going to read this book, is the ending, and is it what you wanted?
When you are switching views from one character to the other, from Cass and Jonathan, what do you have to do to get into the other character's mind?
To get into the, it's a lot of like closing my eyes and visualization. Really,
yeah.
I sit in a quiet room, and I just, that's pretty much it. I zone, and I try to channel them. I try to like hear the conversations in my head. I picture where they are, and it's always with my eyes closed. It's like that's how I tune out everything else, and I can sort of become the character.
Gotcha. Do you ever find yourself rooting for one character or another?
Not really in this book, because I created both of them. In books that I read, always, I've got someone that I'm, that I'm rooting for, and someone that I can't stand, and I'm hoping, gets it in the end, But in this, because I really love both of these characters. I'm not saying they're perfect. I'm not saying they're always likable, but I did not root for either of them. I rooted for both of them, I should say. I rooted for them equally because I love them, and they came from my imagination. So it was hard to dislike someone,
right?
That I created.
Yeah. What is your daily writing process like? You talked about working, at the law office and hating it and realizing that there needed to be a better way. So what became your habit after that?
I'd wake up in the morning. I have 3 little kids. I would, have lots of coffee to get myself nice and jittery and ready to tackle the day. I'd get them off, and then I would just go, usually still in my pajamas, and sit back in my bedroom. We have a little desk in our bedroom, and just go. A lot of distraction. I would like to say that I just completely go into the zone and write. But I definitely do plenty of emailing and Instagram and texting while I'm writing. But in some ways, while that is bad to be so distracted, it also just kind of keeps me on my toes. It keeps my mind really sharp because I'm always in the present moment.
Right. Did you have any idea when you began this book about the situations that you were going to address, or when we start seeing the marriage kind of come apart and the silence building in until it comes to this boiling over point? Were the issues that you started addressing, were those conscious things, or was that just what you felt was the natural outgrowth for these characters?
I knew certain issues I wanted to tackle, I wanted to deal with secrecy, and I wanted to discuss, what is the importance of honesty in a marriage, and complete honesty. I wanted to tackle infidelity, because I think that's a real issue in many, many marriages. I wanted to talk about the little things, like the leaving the toothpaste cap undone, and when that stops becoming just a tiny little irritation and starts becoming a big thing, and something that all of a sudden you can't tolerate, So I had a few things that I wanted to check off, but then the rest of it it's as I write, it's what comes to me. I don't outline, and because I just like to just feel it in the moment.
It's so funny because my son is getting married soon, and my wife and I we're always having these talks, and that sometimes the little things that you that you don't know because you've never lived with this person,
Exactly.
24/7. Sometimes those can become bigger things than, we all think that there are these huge pitfalls that you try to avoid, infidelity and all those things. But sometimes that toothpaste cap can be a real, that grain of sand that gets in your shoe. Right.
Exactly. It's like the toothpaste sounds like no big deal, but if you've asked the person no less than 50 times to please put the cap back on, then it starts being like she doesn't respect me. They don't listen when I talk, So the little thing can really be a bigger thing, because it ends up, you extrapolate it to a larger issue.
Right. Do you ever share your work in progress with anyone, or are you, kind of as Stephen King talks about in his book On Writing, that first draft, keeping the door closed so that it's just you. And then he talks about then later sharing his work with people and getting input. Are you that way? Do you keep it completely to yourself, or do you get input from people as you write?
I get input. I usually try to do 100 pages and I'll share it with my agent because I trust her so much. And I think that you can get too inside your own work, and you
Right.
can't see it the way like a reader would see it. We're the writer, so we can't see it the way someone who's approaching the material for the first time that doesn't know what's in our head is seeing it. So to be able to give it to someone and she's like, honestly, like the first 30 pages, like I just wasn't grabbed. You might know that the story is going to develop and be amazing and so interesting, but you didn't grab me in 30 pages, and then I go back and I'm like, you know what? I need a really like rock solid prologue that's like a good cliffhanger that gets people in because, I know that the story develops and gets really interesting, but I have to get to it more quickly,
Right, exactly.
So I find that like you need a reader. Yes, I can understand writing the whole book and then giving it to somebody, but to me, I'm like, well, I don't know, because I just worry that would be too much time,
Right.
because what if like I've really made sort of a fatal mistake earlier on that if I just shared it earlier on, like I could have avoided,
Yeah, 100,000 words is a lot to invest, and not have any sort of insight.
Exactly. Yes. So that's what I do. I share it. I really trust my agent. I love her. And I think she's given me amazing feedback.
Awesome. The Intermission is your second book, right? Your first one was Love and Miscommunication.
Yes.
Yeah. What was that book about?
So that book was also an intermission of sorts. It was about a woman who's kind of fed up in her life. She's fed up in her professional life, her romantic life. She's a series of unfortunate things happen to her that lead her to decide to go off the internet for 1 year and take a break from reading everybody's status updates and tweeting and going on Instagram every 2 minutes and just feeling like she isn't measuring up. So that's, and she's just sick of like always feeling like she can't function without her phone. And she goes off for the year and sort of you follow her on her disconnected journey on how it changes her life to disconnect.
I think that idea is really intriguing to a lot of people right now. Social media can be such a cesspool of harshness and inflamed emotions and all of that. And I think a lot of us long to just step back sometimes and kind of connect with real life again.
Yes, I think a lot of people, these days when you go out to dinner, it's like now there's sort of a backlash, like it's taboo. I know of people who, if you pull out your phone during dinner, you're the one stuck with the check. And that's their way of getting people to focus on the conversation and not just be, staring at their email the whole time.
Yes.
It's really rude, and it really diminishes the quality of conversation.
It does, absolutely. Alyssa, the new book, The Intermission, is out today. What do you hope people take away from this book?
That relationships are hard, that if you're in a successful one, you deserve a huge pat on the back, that you're not alone if you have secrets that you've been keeping from your partner, and that we're all very complicated people, and nobody, no story is simple and has only one side. No person is one-dimensional. I'd say those are the big takeaways.
Absolutely. Well, Alyssa, thank you so much for taking time to come on the show today. Everyone, the book is called The Intermission. There's a link to it in the show notes. Alyssa, thank you so much for taking time to come on the show today.
Thank you. It was great. I really enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Author Stories podcast. For more great author interviews like this one, go to hankgarner.com and dig through the archives. There's something there I know you'll love. Now stay tuned for a special audio clip from Richard Gleaves' The Jason Crane series.
Welcome to historic Sleepy Hollow, settled in 1640. Jason had looped around the town and had come up Broadway from the south. Behind the retaining wall next to the sign, a yard worker turned on his leaf blower, sending a tidal wave of yellow and red up and over the stones to splash off the windshield of the RV. They passed antique shops, a Shell station, and a Food King grocery. "This is the same Broadway, you know," said Elyssa. "It goes all the way down to Times Square. Used to be an Indian trail, Manhattan to Fort Orange, for the fur trapping business." She kissed the dog. "Oh, don't worry, baby. Nobody's gonna skin you. And you know what the town's most famous for?" "Well, duh," Jason said. Every kid named Crane, especially one as tall and skinny as Jason, had heard a lifetime of Ichabod jokes. He hoped never to hear another. "Did you know it was a real place?" "Of course," he said, though he hadn't. "Don't be so smart," said Elyssa. "Turn here." The streets sloped towards the Hudson, the hillside trying to shake the village off its back. Jason slipped in behind a UPS truck and drove upwards. They turned onto Gory Brook Road. He stuck his head out the window, trying to pass. The UPS truck turned aside to the right. And he saw the house. Here, said Elyssa. She pointed at the driveway of 417 Gory Brook. Jason brought the RV to a smoke-belching halt. The house stood on a knoll, above a steep yard that angled downwards toward the Hudson. An ancient sycamore on the front lawn leaned precariously. The roof was an irregular A-frame, with a long slope on the left and a short one on the right, like a rotated checkmark. The upper floors were trimmed with bands of chocolate-brown wood in a rectangular pattern. They made the house look as if it were trapped behind the bars of a jail cell. A tiny triangular portico extended over the front door, which was rough-hewn, rounded on top, held together by two vertical metal bands, and dotted with nail heads, a Gothic novel in Braille. The gray-blue curtains at the ground floor bay window gave the place a veiled eye aspect, like his grandmother's cataracts. The house seemed to be inspecting Jason with that eye. "What are you doing here, boy?" "I'm watching you." Elyssa put a hand on his shoulder. He jumped. "This is it," she said. She slapped the dashboard. "This is what?" "Our new home." "But—" Jason turned to her, baffled. Her face sparkled with delight. "Surprise!"